It's the moment I've been waiting for. C6 Mavuika time. We're gonna see what she can do the good old comparisons that I like to do. For those more interested in the damage increase we get from, C2 to C6, we will of course be looking at that as well. I am personally more interested in her movement, but from C2 to C5, that won't change at all. So we are going to start with, what kind of damage increases we are seeing here. Now that we have the ability to get her C6, it's probably a crime in some country to not have these crowned. So I think we'll start with that if we have the books. Something I honestly didn't think about, something I never think about. Oh, they're open today. Doesn't matter. We'll be doing most of the damage comparisons in my typical Mavuika team. This is the one I'm most used to, the one I've used the most. So I feel like it would just be the easiest to, get consistent results. Just for reference, my Zealonin is C2R1 in 4-piece Scroll of Cinder City. Binny is C6 with R2 Skyward Blade in 4-piece Oblige, and Silali is C2 R1 with 4-piece Tenacity. Mavuika is currently C2 R1 with 4-piece Codex, and maybe her stats are more important, so we're rocking with 3000 attack, 90 crit with the artifacts, 220 crit damage, and currently no Pyro Goblet, but because of how high her base attack is, I feel like attack goblet's fine. We'll start with a run through floor 12. We do have a damage bonus here, but it shouldn't really matter as long as we're comparing the same thing. Because C3 is burst levels, that's the main thing we're going to be paying attention to here. So we'll see if these guys survive. They didn't. We're just going to go ahead and do her burst. We got a 2.31. We're going to retry it a few times, make sure we get a consistent number. 2.316. 2.316. I do want to start with crowning her burst because that's obviously a lot easier than C3. So let's do that and see how that impacts damage first, and then we'll see. I'm assuming C3 is going to just do a little more than crowning from 8 to 10. I was hoping we could just grab a raw purple so we don't have to go to the crafting station. There we go. All right, going up to crown. All right, let's see here. 2.57. That actually did make a pretty decent difference. 2.573. All right. Might not seem that different, but that's a 250,000 damage increase. As far as I know, talent ups are pretty linear, so I'm gonna guess about 2.9 million here. Here we go, it's part 2, 2.99, okay, actually a little higher than I thought it would be, so close to 3 million, damn. I was keeping track of it in a notepad, and here you can pretty easily see what, the talent ups do. It's pretty significant. All in all, from 8 to 13 gave us almost 700k damage on our burst. At least in this team in rotation, it's roughly 5.5% damage increase per talent level. C4 is going to be a lot harder to objectively compare, because it's a little weird. When you do Mavuika's burst, her passive activates for the next 20 seconds, giving the active character up to a 40% damage increase. This buff gets weaker and weaker over the next 20 seconds until it reaches 0. With C4, it no longer decays, and it jumps from a maximum of 40% to a maximum of 50%. I don't think I've ever tested this in particular, but I do assume it decays linearly, like assuming you started with a maximum of 40, you'll have 20% when there's 10 seconds left, so on and so forth. We'll quickly check out this team as well to see how Mavuika's damage buff changes when she's in sort of off-field support. This is the only team I use her like that in, so I just realized we never do Mavuika's burst in this team, so we're not even ever getting the passive buff. And while I was fighting Perpetual, I didn't think about that, so yeah, let's just go on Dorito Boss. He should survive Mavuika burst without, any other buffs here, so we're probably just gonna look at Kinich's first shot, to be honest, because I don't think he will survive much past that, if at all. But here we go, we should have the buff now. We got a 460 in there, okay. And then a 254. Let's go and try it again and see if we can, get some consistent results going here. Kaboom. We don't have a Deepwood in this team because usually Dia is here and she's in Deepwood, so it's always worth emphasizing that it's not really the numbers themselves, but the difference between the two numbers, which is why I'll also try and have a percent difference as well as we look at C4 here. Boom. Okay, here we go. We're just gonna do the same exact thing we did before. I do not expect a huge difference here. It would probably be more substantial in a longer fight, but we did get a 476 and a 284. The results were expected, but still pretty cool to see nonetheless. Kinich's first shot had nearly all of Mavuika's buff anyway, but it was still a damage increase because of the extra 10% damage buff C4 also gives. And then Kinich's second shot was even more powerful in comparison to C3 because we had lost more of Mavuika's buff, and then at C4, of course, it stays consistent. I am also almost positive this damage buff applies to Mavuika's burst damage itself, but it's something we will look at just to make absolutely sure, and that should be easy to do because once we get C4, due to the 10% extra damage buff here, we'll know. We already have her C3 burst damage numbers, but I want to continue with her on field instead of just looking at that so we can kind of see it decay in real time here. So we're gonna go ahead and do that again. It wasn't the same. That doesn't really matter, honestly, in this case, but I did a few runs. This has been the most consistent, 303, 300, 288. The 288 might be too big of a drop off, so could be we lost someone else's buff, but shouldn't really matter for comparison's sake. So let's see here now. 3 million 307. Let's do it once more to be on the safe side here. Yes, 3.079. So Mavuika's burst damage did get a pretty small buff here at about 3%. So our burst is actually about 33% stronger from where we started at level 8, which is pretty huge. What should be buffed more are these follow-up attacks. So we're gonna look at that now. So let's see, we got a 316 and that should just stay forever. Okay, well, she died. Doing another run here, the numbers stayed consistent. Before we got C4, I kind of thought the 288 was too big of a jump from 300 for it to be the decay, but since we got her to C4 and I couldn't see any other number besides 316 for the non-melt charge attacks, I now assume it really was from the decay. Much like with Kinich, the later charge attacks get a bigger damage boost compared to pre-C4, which makes sense. C5 is talent ups for her skill, which of course should be quite nice for on-field Mavuika. Since the charge attack is mostly, a stationary multiplier, it should be easy to compare. We already have the 316s from C4, but much like with Burst, what I want to do first is crown it, which might actually not require farming. Craftable amount 35. Let's do that first. EULA bonus? 3 on 29. All right, it's fine. Plenty of fingers as well. We also do need at least one of these, but I'm just gonna grab 2 just in case. But okay, here we go. Starting with crown. There is her skill level 10. Oh no, I think they died. Oh no, I hope the boss isn't too weak now. Was it over 900k for her charge though? Obviously a melted charge, but still, that was quite impressive. All right, here we go. So 332. Yes, there they are. The non-melter are what we're looking at. Yeah, there they are again, 332. Okay, we're good. Oh no, I just realized I probably should have looked at her Searing Radiance as well, just like her E tap here, It's unfortunately a bit too late now, pre-crown, to look at, there was like a 205 though. But okay, let's go ahead and grab C5. We'll go and start with her tap E damage. Let's take a look. 242? That seems like way too big of a jump. I guess we'll run with it with a grain of salt. That just seems like too big of a buff. But let's look at the charge attacks now. And boom, where's the boss? 356? Okay, let's do one more. 356. Oh, I think that was a 1 million charge attack. That was pretty cool. Damn. Taking a look at C4 charge attacks first. At level 8, we got 316. At level 10, we got 332 for a 5% damage increase. And then at level 13, we got a 3.56 for a 7.2% damage increase. When it comes to the damage buff of C6, there's not going to be too much to compare, especially with this first one here, because it's a new source of damage. With her tapped E mode, every time it attacks, an additional attack will hit the enemy, 200% multiplier. So should be a pretty big increase. We will see. I guess we're just going to add the two numbers together. The second part I think is way more important. C2 buffs her Ring of Searing Radiance to decrease enemies' death by 20%. The problem is she can't be on her motorcycle attacking and have the ring at the same time. C6 changes that. When she's on her Flame Strider, she gets her own ring that also decreases death by 20%. Also with an additional 500% multiplier every 3 seconds. So of course we're going to check if this directly increases her burst damage, having the death reduced by 20%, if that already applies for her burst. Or if we have to actually wait a little bit so that the thing hits the enemy. I don't really know yet. We're going to test it. But first of all, let's grab it and see what's going on back in good old Abyss. Oh, I just saw her motorcycle come out. So like before, we're just going to stay on field here. I mean, you can see the little attack going there. There was like an 82. As far as I remember reading, this attack does not apply pyro. That would be a little hard to see because it happens like right after. I don't even really think it's an internal cooldown thing because well, yeah, still hard to really say for sure. Yeah, okay, wait. I might have to slow this down. Actually, no, I don't. When it just hits this one, but the motorcycle attack hits that one, no overloaded is happening. You know what I mean? It just doesn't apply pyro. Again, that is a good thing. So it doesn't, steal melts or, cryo aura, but probably still something worth pointing out because it doesn't say anything about that here. It just says AoE pyro damage. But yeah, since it's a totally separate attack, it's a little hard to compare it just without. So I'm not even going to try. Also because I think, again, the other part's more important and that's what I want to focus on. Also just because I feel like it's less important than, burst DPS / charge attack Mavuika. So let's see what that did. It's gonna be a little hard to test when she's literally just one-shotting. I think it popped up for a frame, but I couldn't see what that frame was. We're just gonna see if we can do the rotation fast enough so that these enemies are still alive when we do the burst. 2.9? Wait, that's worse. That's weaker. Wait, well, her charge attacks are doing more. Charge attacks are doing almost 400k, which is weird. Oh, wait, the searing thing reducing the def. But every 3 seconds, we should have like an extra attack going off as well. I haven't been able to really see that. No, dude, I am trying to not one-shot the boss, but it's just happening. How long has that Mavs 7 out of 7 been there? I am so sorry. Jesus Christ, Moga, please. And yeah, just these Searing Rings 20% def reduction gave us a pretty nice boost at 11.2% damage increase there. I haven't even been able to see the extra attacks now, so we're just going to, you know, drive around on her motorcycle. Oh, interesting. So the attacks while we're on her motorcycle don't apply pyro either, you can see, so that shouldn't mess up anything with melt. I was a bit confused because they just look exactly like the Searing Radiance attacks, which I guess makes sense. She does basically give herself a ring now. We were actually able to successfully get off a burst on the minions, but it was for some reason less than at C5. I really have no idea why that would be, to be honest. There is an additional 900k that pops up at the same time, which I would assume comes from the extra attack. It's not so much less that we're missing a buff or anything, or maybe a tiny buff, maybe a stack of Sea Lollies Milled, I don't know. But with that extra damage now, that 903, it's almost a 4 million burst, so I'm happy with it anyway. So whatever, we will leave it at, yes, she does more damage at C6. Cool beans. I want to move on to what I've been excited for, which is the C6 movement. The first thing we're going to look at is this sentence. Mavuika's terrain crossing abilities will be further improved. This means the little bar next to her Night Soul bar when you're climbing, surfing, or flying. I didn't even bother testing inside of Natlan because it is the same there anyway, but I'll have a side-by-side here. C6 is on the right. We're going to see how high she can climb this pillar. Kaboom! Oh. Yeah, basically all the way to the top. I did hear her climbing goes from 1 second to 2 seconds, but that felt more like 1.5 seconds, but I'll time it while I'm editing and have some clarification on screen. Next, the flying test, same thing. I'm just gonna line them up so when they first start using their bar, and that is definitely a lot longer for C6. I don't need to see a side-by-side for that, but I'll still have one. And finally, surfing. This should be pretty much the same as flying, I guess. I specifically remember the C5 footage here, not being able to make it to the island. And here we weren't either, but we are technically not swimming anymore here at C6. So yeah, I mean, definitely an improvement. And last, but possibly most importantly, just her normal motorcycle riding, which is reliant on her Night Soul points. This is of course where this chunk of text helps. We'll basically get 80 extra Night Soul points when she drops to 5. So essentially a free refill. Here we go, just starting with cruising along. I'll probably have some thoughts at C5 as well, but let's keep an eye on C6 and see what happens with the Night Soul points. And yeah, pretty much when they're empty, we go back up to not actually full. I kind of figured it would be a complete full thing, but actually, yeah, there it is. As I kind of thought, we don't even need to hop off the motorcycle. We can just press E again. Now, I'm not sure if we do have to hop off at this point, because there's a 15-second cooldown. Oh wait, no, there it goes. Haha. So we can just basically stay on our motorcycle literally infinitely. It really doesn't feel that much faster than like just normal sprinting, but it doesn't use stamina, so you're never gonna run out. I guess now that I said that, here is also a side-by-side of Mavuika just sprinting across the Natlan Bridge. Of course, she will soon run out of stamina here, so. And then finally, sprinting Mavuika. I want to see what's going on with that. I may have been a little bit late. I guess I'm mostly curious to see if we can press E again. No, there's still a 7-second cooldown on that. So actually not a huge buff to sprinting Mavuika, I suppose. You can basically sprint twice as long though. So that's something for sure. Oh, that's right. C1 makes her maximum Night Soul points 120. And C6 only recovers 80, so it's not a full refill. It would be nice if once you got a constellation like that, the number would be updated here, because it still says 80. I mean, what can I say? She was already one of the best exploration characters, even outside of Natlan, and yeah, she's just a lot better now, I guess. I will say it did not feel like the climbing duration was double. I was trying to find a good place to climb up, but like mountains are bad because anytime she's not technically climbing, it resets the bar, which is cool. It means she can climb taller things as long as there's a rest point every so often. Let's check this. I mean, no, it's definitely noticeably better than it was before. She is such a good climber if there are like rest points here and there. Fastest by far. If you're trying to climb something without any rest points though, that's where she kind of falls off. But alright, I suppose that'll do it for the C6 Mavuika showcase. I don't know if there's going to be implications of me discussing if it was worth it or not in the title or thumbnail, so I will just say, yeah, I think she's pretty nice. I knew it. I knew Cap would just come in and ruin my outro, like always, every time. She already did so much damage, so I don't really care that she does more now, to be honest. I still think it's pretty fun and interesting to compare, you know, the numbers, what she was doing before and after. So if we're just talking about the damage increase, I mean, they were some pretty big increases, and I mean, in terms of C6, I kind of just gave up, so it's probably way more impressive. But yeah, she's even better at exploration now, and that alone for me was worth it, so yes. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, though. Dropping a like or subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed is always greatly appreciated as well. Thanks, as always, for watching, and until next time.